One of the things about being in a business like SAB or SAB Miller as it's called today is that, I think that under the late Graham McCarr and even the guys that followed him, is that one thing about SAB Miller is that SAB is that the strategy was very, very clearly defined. So there was no mystery about, where Graham in his day wanted to take the business. And so that strategy was very clearly articulated and communicated to the business as a whole. So I think the important thing about strategy is that it's no good if it's just in the minds of the leadership. It's got to be cascaded across the entire business to the lowest possible common denominator. And that's all very good and well, but I think one of the things that a lot of businesses miss, if you will, is the fact that once you've got the strategy outlined or articulated, is that to underpin that with what we called it in Beer Division those days, integrated performance management or just performance management. And performance management, what that really did was it made sure that the strategy came to life. And what that means really is effectively is that you've got to make sure is that, across the entire organization, there is some link back to strategy, and the vehicle to do that was a thing called a performance management system. So, everybody had a scorecard, and it wasn't a sophisticated one, but the scorecard in some shape or form related back to strategy. And then not just make sure that you do it, is to go and revisit it on a frequent basis. And so, this is what we set out to do, how we're doing on a 3-month, 6-month cycle. So, you can have clearly articulated strategy. If you don't share it, it's a problem. And if you don't underpin it with performance management, it's even a bigger problem. Strategy at the end of the day was designed and developed by the Exco, and so you to the extent that you participate in the global strategy, it depended where you were in the organisation. But I think what you're required to do, and certainly what we do now in a business like Famous Brands, is articulate the group strategy, and then share that with the business units, but say to them, listen, that's where the business intends going in a macro sense is, can you go down into your own little geographic territory now and link that? So show me a business plan that relates back to the corporate strategy. And, but in terms of this whole performance management cycle, what we've done over the years, and it's borrowed from my time at SAB, is you start off the cycle with a very, very robust strategic planning session that happens in November of every year. And simplistically, what I talk about is let's go away and unpack all the moving parts of the business. Let's punish them. It's about, Jim Collins talks about, let's talk about the brutal truths here. So we talk about how do you go and unpack every moving part of the organization, put it back together again, and out of that will come your strategy. Of course, what you've got to do then is the next step in the process is to make sure that your budgets, your financial budgets, underpin the strategy, because if that's what you're going to do, how are you going to fund it, and can you afford it? Once you've done those two issues, the fact then is you've got to cascade the budget and the business plan into performance scorecards for the team. And then once you've done that, is we have a thing called an executive officer review, where, to your point, we actually go and revisit the business plan every 3 months and say, well, that's what we set out to do. How are we shaping? Are we on track? Are things falling behind? Or there's stuff that's not relevant anymore? Is there new stuff that's come along that we can add? So, I think the days of businesses doing 5-year long-term scenario planning, the dynamic in which we work today is so immediate, is that you've got to keep revisiting that thing every 3 months. So doing that every 3 months, and then at the end of the year, of course, doing things like performance appraisals and then recognizing people. So, people often say to me, so, Kevin, what makes a successful leader? And there are a lot of things, but at the end of the day, my view simplistically is, and I was taught this by one of my mentors, is that, what do people really want from you as your manager? Is that, is tell me what you want from me, tell me exactly what you want from me. Give me help when I need it and reward me accordingly. It's not rocket science, it's simplistic, but a lot of businesses don't get it. one of the parts of the performance management cycle that I didn't mention just now because it wasn't about content. You know, the people is the more soft side. So included in that performance management cycle are a couple of interventions that happen along the way besides the performance appraisal stuff. So what we will do on a frequent basis is that probably every quarter is to have an executive succession conversation. So we kind of look at who the executives in the business, and you're ideally wanting to have at least 1 + 2. So 2 guys in the pipeline that can take over from 1. And so that's quite a robust discussion because that's about leadership. But what we also do is we do this thing called a people balance sheet. So, you know, it's all very well to have a financial balance sheet, but what's your people balance sheet like? So we go and have a complete people balance sheet all the way down the organization to probably just junior management level. And we're looking for those gems about who we're going to pull through the organization. And once you've identified them, you know, how are you going to do them? You know, is there a retention strategy? What kind of strategy are you going to apply? So those 2 mechanisms in terms of executive succession and people balance sheet are 2 primary pieces of this integrated performance management cycle. So as you said, what it is about, it's about making sure that you've got the talent is there, the pipeline is good, and then how you're going to maintain, how you're going to retain those people and motivate them so that you don't lose them, especially in an environment like today, which is so highly competitive and there's only a limited amount of leadership around. I've just read this book called Legacy, which is what is about, you know, what the All Blacks can teach us about business and about life. And I mean, it's for me, it's a fascinating story to the extent I've actually given each of my executives a copy of the book and said, you know, this is leadership made simple. I mean, for me, I mean, there's a very compelling line in that whole book, and I think that speaks to quality of people. And we'll talk about, you know, when you're recruiting. So I mean, the one line in that book, which my throwaway line was, better people make better All Blacks. So it doesn't matter how technically talented you might be. You know, they talk about no dickheads. So I think that's important. And I mean, what we do in Famous Brands is that one of the things when we're recruiting, it is all about culture. You know, when we recruit, the first thing we're looking for is we recruit for culture. Sometimes the technical skills might be missing, but let's recruit for culture and train for technical if we have to. And it's the same thing, you know, better people make better All Blacks. You know, better people make better Famous Brands. It's the same analogy, but I mean, the book is fascinating. A must read for me for all leadership in South Africa. I'm born in a really small town called East London, which was a hell of a nice place to grow up as a kid many years ago. And I'm the product of 2 civil servants. My mum was in the nursing profession, and my dad was in the postal services. And, you know, I think if you talk about early influences in your life, I mean, I lost my mum when I was 17, which was really, really tragic. But I mean, growing up as a kid, I mean, this woman just had a single-minded belief that I was special. I mean, not that it necessarily always turned out that way along the way, but I mean, you know, I had a kind of strange relationship with my dad growing up, and I mean, he kind of never really bought into the same view that my mum had of me. You know, he kind of said, this guy, you know, he has all the potential to grow up to being, in those days, was a ducktail, you know. So but my mum would say, no, this kid's special, this boy's special. And I mean, you know, so my mom believed in me from the get-go. So she was probably the earliest mentor in my life and probably had the greatest influence on my life. And then, along the way, I've been very lucky, you know. I mean, so when she passed away at the age of 17, it's like, oh, God, you know, what's happened to the greatest love of my life is gone. But I was very lucky because when I got into Distell, I met a guy by the name of Rach van Renen. And Rach was a unique character. You know, he was a really ambitious guy. And I met him in Port Elizabeth when I joined Distell, and we just connected. And so there was great chemistry between us, and Rach adopted me. He was much older than I was. And so Rach sort of navigated my career into Distell. And then Rach actually left, and then regrettably much later, Rach passed away, also from cancer, which had killed my mom as well. So I had kind of an early mentor that got taken away through cancer, another one that got taken away through cancer. And then I, in my SAB Miller days, I mean, Pete Savory had a profound impact on my life. In fact, he phoned me this morning just coincidentally to tell me that he's a shareholder of Famous Brands, and so I better make sure that when I do move on, is that there's strong succession there. But I was very privileged in the SAB environment to have Pete Savory was a guy I could go to. Graham McCarr was a guy that I had a great relationship with. And then, of course, later on, Norman Adamy. So, you know, all those people have in some way or other inspired me, adopted me, and kind of, you know, helped me to grow and develop. And then more recently, of course, not really from a growth and development perspective, but the Alamandaris family at Famous Brands have been remarkable people to work with. I mean, I find them very inspiring, humble people. There are a lot of life's lessons that I've learned from them. So, you know, I think you know, I can't overemphasize the importance in life of mentorship, and I've just been blessed. I've had some great people in my life. Distell was my first kind of entree into corporate world, and I mean, it was a bit like a rabbit in headlights, but I mean, you know, they also were a learning organization. I mean, they adopted you very, very quickly. I mean, I was a young guy, as a simple example, you know, sent down to Stellenbosch on an induction program. I was only a merchandiser, and the first week of the induction, we stayed in this place called Vredekap, which is the homestead of the wine farm. So you can imagine what kind of impact it has on a young guy in terms of how am I in the right place. I mean, unashamedly, you know, I felt like I was in the right place. And one thing that still were great about was discipline. I mean, that business was highly disciplined. And I mean, the loyalty that they were able to engender in that business was quite phenomenal. I mean, people adored Dr. Rupert because he was an icon. And I mean, it's not a tale, but I mean, there were some guys who actually, one guy apparently, I never met the guy, but I mean, his wife gave birth to twins, and the one was Anton, the other one was Rupert. That's the kind of relationship that you had with the organization. So it was a great place for me to start to learn about the corporate life. But I mean, unashamedly, I think in those days, Distell was quite suffocating because it was still kind of ruled by a few people. And there wasn't space really to express yourself, so to speak. Just going to SAB was a complete change. I mean, that for me was like going from university into going to study for your MBA. I always talk about SAB being my alma mater. I mean, if ever there was a learning organization, that was it. It was a phenomenal environment, and you know, in the early days, I mean, that business was at 97% market share. So you would think, you know, what a cushy number. Where else could you want to work than in a place like SAB? But I mean, you know, very early on, I think even Pete Lloyd, before Graham McCarr, used to say, no, we need, because the marketplace, and especially the government, used to talk about SAB as being as a monopoly. And we would quickly say, we're not a monopoly, we're a temporary sole supplier, because we'd lived through some beer wars. And so we weren't a monopoly, we were just bloody good at what we did. I think when the competitive set came along, we had the ability to take them on and generally most of the time beat them. But I mean, it was just a phenomenally well-rounded business. I mean, besides the fact that you fell in love with the product and the brands because they're so high profile, they're like badges that you wear. I mean, behind the scenes, that business was phenomenal about process, and we spoke earlier on about strategy. I make sure that stuff all comes alive. I mean, the performance management thing wasn't something that just dropped out of the air. Graham McCarr and obviously the board and the executive decided at one point in time is that we really needed to put some energy into the performance side of SAB. And so there were 30 of us who were sent to Minnesota in the United States to go and do a performance management program, and we came back as change agents. So each one of us were given a piece of territory in the business, and mine was at head office marketing at the time, to go into the organization with people and colleagues and talk to them about this performance management process that I spoke to you about early on. So there were 16 of us that were just change agents, and our job was to change the culture, change the attitude in SAB, make it a business that was about winning, about performing, about high performance. So, you know, that was on the process side. And on the people side, I mean, you know, that business just had the uncanny ability to attract highly talented people. So getting into SAB, it was harder getting out than it was, you know, it was hard to get into SAB. And when you're there, guys never left. Most people that have worked there for a reasonable amount of time, they'll tell you it is like a romance, you know. And I was an ambitious guy, and I'd done quite a number of different roles in SAB, and then in terms of this performance management thing, every year we'd have your appraisal done, and at the same time we'd have a career development conversation. So that's another part of this whole performance management stuff. How are you doing now, and where do you see yourself going in the organization? So in a conversation at one of these things, the guy that I was reporting to at the time was quite new in that environment. He took over from Pete Savory, and glowing performance appraisal, Kevin, you're doing a great job. So, let's talk about career development now. What do you like to do? And I said to him, well, what I'd really like to do is become a general manager, because those guys had big portfolios looking after manufacturing. And that was a gap in my repertoire. I understood logistics, sales, marketing, but manufacturing was a gap. And kind of guy said, well, Kevin, I'm not sure that's going to be possible. So I said, well, why not, So no, because most of the guys that are going to those general management roles today have got to have an MBA. And I said, but I've been here for 10, 11 years, this performance doesn't matter. I said, I hear what you're saying, but technically we want to make sure these guys are highly qualified. Maybe it was just a moment of madness, but I said, you know what, I'm out of here. Mentally I said, I'm out of here. And I decided that I'm going to leave SAB, and I had two mates of mine that they were customers of mine, Derek Myers and Robbie Mitchell. They started a business called The Keg, which I'd been interfacing with in terms of my customer relationship with them. And I liked The Keg, and I thought, I'm going to get one of these kegs. I'm going to go to East London, and I'm going to sit next to the beach, and that's going to be my lot in life. I'm fed up now. And I did that. I relocated my family back to East London. I had a keg in East London, which was a downtrodden thing. We took it in 18 months and made it the keg of the year. But I very also soon realized that this intellectually is not going to stimulate me enough, And thank goodness, again, I can talk a lot about, you can be successful in life, but you've got to have some luck along the way. And Rob and Derek said to me, listen, Kevin, this thing's starting to ramp up now, and all they were, and they are genuinely, look, we're just restaurateurs. We think there's a business to be had here, so why don't you join us as the MD of Keg and help us take this thing to the next level, which I duly did. And we had a wonderful time. We operated out of a house in Morningside in Durban, and there were really four of us, myself, Robbie, Derek, and a financial guy called Mark. And we ramped that business up significantly to about 60 kegs at one time. And keg was really the flavor of the month at those days. It was a phenomenal business. And then it was in the sort of early 90s, and it was at a time when Nelson Mandela was going to be released from prison. And you remember everybody was storing up baked beans because the world was going to implode. And Rob and Derek said, listen, Kevin, we're out of here. This place is going to, everything we've built up now, it's at a point where we must exit. So they wanted to go and live in Canada, and we had this great business, and the business that really was courting us before this conversation was Spur. And Alan Amble from Spur, he loved the keg business. And we had long conversations with Alan. We agreed about value, but Alan, in Alan's own inimitable style, and I've gotten to know him well over the years, Alan said, I love this business, but I'm going to tell you what I'm prepared to do is I'll give you guys 50% of the value in cash and 50% in paper. And Rob and Derek were kind of very nervous about that because they didn't know what's going to happen to the paper, which is obviously shares. And so they wanted to get their cash out and run. They wanted to go and live in Canada, remember. And out of the blue came a gentleman from a company called King Consolidated Holdings. He said, listen, I believe you guys want to sell. We want to come in as late bidders for this business. And I'll tell you what, we'll give you cash. You don't have to take paper. So Rob and Derek said, listen, Kevin, we love the fact that you're going to stay behind and drive this for us, but we'll take the money. So Keg, unfortunately, ended up in a business called King Consolidated Holdings. The rest is history now because, they just destroyed the brand and everything else that goes with it. And if I often say, as if Keg had ended up with Spur, it would have been a very big business today and a successful business. So I went along as part of the transaction, did a 2-year profit warranty at King. And quite frankly, coming to the back end of the profit warranty, wasn't quite even sure what I was going to do, but my life was about to change again, remarkably. So the industry is quite incestuous, and so there was this guy called Craig McKenzie that had started Debonair's Pizza. And we'd bumped into each other because in the franchising business you always talk. And Craig said to me, listen, Kevin, what are you going to do at the end of your profit warranty? I said, Craig, I actually don't know. But I mean, I'm not stressing about it. I'm sure that I'll find something. And he said, why don't you come and have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee with the Alamandaris family at it was called Steers Holdings those days. And I said, no, well, I've got nothing to lose. I'll happily go and have this cup of tea. And so he introduced me to these three brothers and a cousin. And I mean, I walked into the boardroom, and there they were, silk ties, cufflinks with their monogram initials on their sleeve. Very nice people. I didn't know it at the time, though, but a lot of them couldn't really verbalize well in English because they were still from Greek descendant. So I sat there and chatted to them, and one of them did all the talking, others never said a word. And I kind of thought, well, this is odd. Anyway, I got up and I said, thank you very much. And so Craig was like on the phone to me the next day, how did it go? I said, yeah, it was okay, but it's not a place I want to work, thanks very much. So I said, no, I'm not interested. And then, because Craig wanted me to come and take over Debonaire's Pizza, because he was actually going, he was getting to the back of his profit warranty. And he phoned me about 2 weeks later and said, listen, why don't you come and have a cup of coffee just with a guy called Theophanus Alamandaris, who we now affectionately call Funny. So I said, okay, Craig, all right, I'll go and do that. And it was like one of those moments when I sat opposite this guy and he spoke to me about what they want to do with this business. And the fact that, they were kind of worried about the threat of McDonald's and coming into South Africa and wiping out their wealth. And there was just a moment of, I think it was magic with this guy and I, where we connected. And at that moment, I actually made up my mind is that I would actually go and do this for him. In fact, I don't often tell the story, but I mean, it was long ago too. I actually not moved because I was getting an exit Kinko anyway. So I went to work at Steers Holdings for 10,000 a month less than I was earning at Kinko. But I just felt like, there was something here for me to go and do. And so, I joined those days Steers Holdings as the MD of the Steers brand, and a brand that was really in a bad place. But we spent 18 months really working hard on the brand. And it wasn't long after that where they started to give me some other, added to my portfolio, and I became the Chief Operating Officer in about 2005, I think. Right at the outset, I mean, I think, first of all, I think they were brave because there was no outsiders there. I mean, they were a family business. But I think the marketplace had also kind of told them is that, listen, if you don't do something with this listed vehicle, you should just unbundle and go back to being a family-owned business. So I think there was some pressure on them to kind of to unlock the value of this business. So, as they got more confident with me, I think they sort of gave me more and more responsibility, and the more that they kind of withdrew. And I think, that was really brave of them to do that, and I gained an enormous amount of respect for them very early. So once we started to articulate this business, because I mean, it was quite fascinating for me because, I mean, you're going into a listed vehicle and you just expect to see that there's at least some sort of process in the business. But I mean, there was very little. I mean, you asked for budgets. The group FD used to set the budgets and give it to everybody. You asked for business plans. There weren't any. So it was a listed vehicle, but really with lots of gaps in terms of running a really good business. And so one of the first things I did to them is said, what we need to do here is to do a business plan for this business, but articulate the vision. And we're coming back to the earlier conversation we had now. So, you've got strategy, but what's the hill you plan to climb? And I mean, all this language was new to them, so they were kind of just letting me go a little bit at a time. So very early, we articulated what we thought was a vision for the organization. But before we did that, I mean, I said to them is that, listen, you guys, you're going to want to leave a legacy behind, yeah. So as you kind of withdraw from the business, which you are doing now, and you're bringing in more people from the outside, I mean, what are the things that are like non-negotiable for you? So right at the early stage, I was asking them, what's sacrosanct for you guys in terms of this business? And I mean, as I said, some of them can't really verbalize well in English, so, kind of a little bit of a panel beating job with them in terms of language. But I mean, at the end of the day, the two things that they said was not negotiable for them was hard work and honest endeavor. That's how they built the business to what it was today. So when we set out to create a vision for this organization, sitting alongside that was, what's the value system here? What counts around here? And hard work and honest endeavor have always been part of the fabric of what's today become famous brands. So we started out on this journey saying, that's the vision, okay? And I started to pull all these processes into place to unpack the vision, the type of stuff I've spoken to you about in terms of performance management. I mean, the people side, in the early days, as we embarked on the journey, I even used to interview the receptionists because I wanted to see the whites of the eyes of these people that were going to help us take this business on this journey that we embarked on. So, it was important from a recruitment perspective to make sure that you were getting the right people. So in the early days, I mean, while we were putting all this process in place, it kept on falling over. And I thought, well, what's wrong here, And I mean, what you eventually find when you scratch is that it's great to have process, but if you don't have the people that can execute on the process, it's going to fall over. So in the early days, I mean, there was quite a bit of churn in terms of people because I had to go back to them and say, listen, if we're going to do this thing, there's some people here that aren't going to come along. And I mean, I laughed in the early stages because I used to say to them, because maybe some of them were family members, and said, well, can you sort your brother-in-law out? And they said, no, that's why you're here, Kevin. So it was tough, but I mean, we got through that, and we put people and process into place, and we started on this journey, and the vision really was in 2000, I think, was to become the leading branded franchisor in South Africa. That's what we wanted to achieve, and that sort of drove all the strategy going forward for the business. And that's where we started to say, well, if we're going to do that, we've got some nice brands there, but can we start to embark on an acquisitive strategy as well? So we did, how do we make the existing businesses work better? And then how do we go and acquire other businesses to build what we wanted to become, which was this leading branded food service franchisor in Africa. I've often been asked is that, if you think about typical family businesses that bring people in from outside, lots of times it ends in tears. So how come, Kevin, it's never gotten to that with you and this family, which I've been with now for 16 and nearly 17 years? And I mean, I think there's some really good learnings that I think I can share with people who are thinking about kind of, family business. I need help from outside, how do I go about it? And I think the very early thing is to find out from the family what's special for you? What's the legacy that you want to leave behind? Like I spoke about hard work and honest endeavor. And then as you embark on this process, it doesn't matter how smart you are, what your kind of background is that try to bring the family along with you, which I did. I involved them in, even though the stat plan session was kind of new for them, I made sure that they came to it, is that they participated, even in their own broken English way. So I made sure that I kept them involved in the process all the time. And even when I was kind of taking over more and more of the business, I made sure that when we had conferences, for argument's sake, I invited them to the conferences, so they sat there. We celebrated them at every conference, so I made them feel part of what we were doing. I mean, we did things. I mean, I saw a thing when I went to go and visit Guinness in Ireland once, in London actually, and they had the pictures of all the Guinness families down the corridor. So I took pictures of these three brothers and a cousin, and I've put them up. They're all over famous brands, never forget, these are the founding members. And so when they see that kind of stuff, and I made sure that they had parking, so that they even got offices at famous brands today. I've never once have you kind of gone in and said, okay, well, I'm the new kid on the block, you've invited me in here to help you do this business, now can you step aside? I mean, they will step aside in their own time. And then one very important thing I think is important, because a guy asked me the other day, he said, listen, I've got this family business, and I want you to bring this guy in from outside. And so what I want to know from you, Kevin, is how much equity should I give away? I'm saying, well, what do you mean, how much equity are you going to give? He said, well, because this guy's coming from outside, he says, listen, I'll take your business to the next level, but I want to have a piece of the action. I mean, if someone's doing that for you up front, they come at you for all the wrong reasons. They must earn their equity. So that's got to come over time. And I've earned the equity. I never had share options at day one, but I got it over time. So if you bring in people in from outside, is that make sure that it's for the right reasons. They got to look at the business and say, I'm passionate about this thing. I can make this thing special. The equity thing will follow. So respect the family along the way. And I think that's why we've been successful. So now we want to scale. So we say, okay, well, if we're going to scale, we've got the people in the process thing, we've relatively got it installed now. So how do we kind of take the next step in the journey? And so what we said is that we want to have a business that is characterized by best-in-class brands. And they had to be number 1 or number 2 in the category. And so fortuitously, whatever it was, I don't know, but I mean, I knew that the Wimpy business was going to be coming on the market because it was private equity owned, 70% through ethos and 30% through management. So I made contact with the Wimpy folk, and we started that negotiation. And I mean, I went back to the family and said, listen, there's a chance for us to get our hands on the Wimpy business. I mean, it was and still is a big business. And they said, Kevin, it's a nice business, and I mean, it can kind of really, it'll be a great overlay to the strategy we articulated, but how much is this thing going to cost? I mean, fact is that what happened was the Wimpy business was going to come on the market for about 145 million. At the time, our market cap was 85 million. And they said, how the hell are we going to do this? It's not doable, And if we do it, we don't want to dilute, because we can now see the first step of upside in terms of value. So you're going to have to do it on the basis of debt. So we successfully negotiated for the Wimpy business at 145 million, but now I had to go and find the money. So I'll never forget, and it was amazing how the world's changed. I'll talk to you about how the world's changed. So there was myself and the finance director going around with this PowerPoint presentation. We went to ABSA, Standard, Nedbank, RMB. And I mean, the kind of guys, most of them just laughed us out of the room. They said, are you out of your mind? You've got a business at 85 million market cap, you want to acquire this for 145. And we're the sureties, because franchising is all about intellectual property. So we never had properties or assets that we could kind of use to give sureties for the loan. And I could see this Wimpy thing just kind of slipping away from us, and we went to Investec. And I must say is that Investec guys, I mean, they're known for risk. We showed them the model, and they got it. They understood it, and Investec actually came along. And on that basis, we did the Wimpy transaction. And even the marketplace at that time said, geez, you guys are going to choke on this thing. But I mean, thank goodness we didn't. In fact, we paid off that debt, and I think in about 4 years, the loan term was about 5. And I mean, it completely transformed the business. That was the turning point for what was Steers Holdings becoming Famous Brands and becoming a real kid on the block. Along the way, in the 16-year journey of mine, is that, I have been headhunted from time to time. And I've always had a very simple answer. Listen, you can leave me alone. What I'm doing now, I've been practicing for all my life. And that's the way I felt about Famous Brands very, very early. And so now, having to come to a point in my lifetime when I'm saying, I think as we chatted earlier about football and stuff like that, I think every CEO has got a shelf life. You're surrounded with some great young people, like I've built myself. I created this thing with all these young, ambitious people around me. You've got to say, is it time to hand over the baton? So Famous Brands has never been a job for me. Famous Brands has never been a career for me. Famous Brands has been my life. For 16 years, it has been my life. It has been an emotional and traumatic time, even though I volunteered or I made the call to hand over to this guy called Darren Heel, who's been working alongside me for the best part of 12 years. And that feeling about Famous Brands is not unique to me. I mean, if you go and ask most of the guys on the exco at Famous Brands, they'll tell you that they love the business. And even for them, this is not a business. This is a way of life. And we've been able to engender that in the leadership team in Famous Brands, because I think what we've bred in our business is we talk about a culture of high performance, and every damn day we get up with one thing. We compete to win. And thank goodness we've been able to win. I mean, does that mean that we've got everything right? No, geez, I tell you, we've had some failures too, and I mean, you learn from them. So now I'm at a point in time where I come to this sort of crossroads in my life, and people say to me, so Kevin, you've achieved everything beyond your wildest dreams, and I have. If I think back at my upbringing as a kid and my humble background to where I am today, I really have been blessed. So what are you going to do now? I mean, are you going to go and sit at the beach? So my answer is, look, I don't do golf. I don't hunt. I don't fish. Business is my life. business is my hobby. And so, I'm sitting on a few boards now, which is very nice, giving me a different spin on businesses. But there's going to be life after famous business for me. I talk about, I'm looking at a second career in my life. I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to repackage myself now, but in a different way where I can choose what I want to do. And so choosing what I want to do is being on these boards. But one of the other passions I have in life is for young people that have got, maybe not even young, but I mean just people that have got a great business and a vision, but don't quite know how to take the business on the next part of the journey. So I look at myself as maybe being a venture capitalist in terms of investing either finance or time or energy or skill or expertise and going to find these businesses and helping to unlock the value. So spending a bit more time with my family is important because my family have suffered along the way in terms of what I've done because I've spent my life building businesses. So spending more time with my family, choosing what I want to do, but still being part of business. And because business is what gets me out of bed every morning. But especially to find young people that I think I can help to realize the dreams that they have for a business that they've created.